So in the previous tutorial, we set up a new external event called check for open slot. And we did that so that when we came upon a new item in the game, we could run this check code and it would, if there's a slot open, it would place that item in the topmost open slot. But, of course, we ran into a very obvious problem. If Bob's inventory is full, and he wants to make room for a new item, he needs to be able to delete an item, right? Or eventually move that item to, say, like an inventory chest in order to make more room for items. So that's what we're going to be working toward today. And actually, I've been thinking about sort of our inventory container here. And you want to make your inventory, or your menu screens, I should say in general, match the pacing of your game. Now, if you're building kind of a first-person shooter, really fast-paced action game, you want a really fast-paced menu, right? You want to be able to select multiple items and delete and move and all these different things very quickly. But for a game like this, like a Pokemon, or even a game that has more action, like a Legend of Zelda top-down game, your menu needs to be slower paced, more methodical, right? Single item select. Okay, that's what we're going toward here. So we're going to move toward creating that today, and move toward creating a more direct link between these items and Bob's inventory. So let's get started. The first thing that I actually want to do is I want to go to Project Manager, Global Variable, and I want to go down to iManager and create a new child variable off of that. And we're going to call that variable current choice. And we're going to hit apply. I'm going to get rid of this for right now and get rid of my main here. And let's take a look at our inventory manager. Now, as of now, the computer has no idea, or the software has no idea, that when we look at this inventory screen, our minds make a clear connection between this item and this wording, right, so that these are connected, but the software really doesn't know that, actually. And even more so, we make a connection between this object and slot 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Bob's inventory. Again, the software doesn't know that, it has no idea. We have to explain to it that there's a connection here between this and Bob's inventory slot 1. So how are we going to do that? We're going to use the mouse cursor position. More specifically, we're going to say if the mouse cursor is in this area, to treat this as a slot 1 object. Let's go to our inventory manager, and I want to create a couple of subgroups here. So here's one, and I want to call this one selecting an item. Now I'm going to make another group here. Under this one, I'm going to call this one slot 1. And let's create a sub-event here to slot 1. Now, we're dealing with the mouse cursor, right? You might be tempted to say, okay, I'll use this one if the cursor touch is on an object. But that's not really what we're working with here. We're working with the cursor position. So let's start with the X position, and let's say if the X position is greater than or equal to, now what X position are we looking for? We want this one ultimately, right? Greater than or equal to here. So we can start by adding our beginning position, which by now you should start getting comfortable with just typing in your variables. It'll save you a bunch of time. But if you still need to use this button here, go ahead and do it. global variable menus dot inventory container dot POSX. That's our starting position. Now we need our offset, and our offset is the distance between this and this. So we can use the slot 1 pick X position as our offset. So let's do that. Let's say plus global variable menus dot inventory container dot slot 1 dot, I think this is lowercase, pick X. Now the layer we're dealing with here is the inventory layer. Make sure you choose that. Don't worry about the camera. All right, so what did we say? We just said if the mouse cursor is from here greater than or equal to right here. Now that includes all of that. We don't want that, so we want to limit this. So let's copy and paste this. And let's now say, and if the X position is less than or equal to, so what are we looking for here? We're looking for this, right, to this. So all we need is the width of our object, and we created this so we know that the width of our object is simply 64 pixels, right? Or maybe you created a different object width. So I'm going to say our offset here is 64, and let's hit OK. Now let's copy this top one, paste it in, and let's handle our Y position, and it's basically the same thing. Click cursor Y position, greater than or equal to, now we just change this to position Y, and we change this to pick Y. The inventory layer is still the one we're working with, and now we can copy that Y, paste it in, change our logic to less than or equal to this, which is our starting position right here, plus the height of our object, which is again 64. All right, let's do a test here to see if we've nailed this positioning. Let's say we're going to change the text of our slot 5 object to equal you are on slot 1. Let's run our test. Let's run our preview here. So it should only change when we're clicking on slot 1. Here we go. There you go. So now we're starting to make us an explicit connection between this area, right, and something else. Okay. Now the only thing we need to do is let's copy and paste. Slot 2, slot 3, slot 4, slot 5. Okay? And let's go in and take our time here. And let's change this up to slot 2. Now we're starting to get into mistake land here, and in fact we've got a lot of tedious copying and pasting and changes just like this in the upcoming tutorials, and invariably you're going to make a mistake. As a matter of fact, I can say with almost complete certainty that I'm going to make a mistake myself. And mistakes are going to happen, right? If you are an organized programmer, you'll be able to isolate your mistakes and figure out what code is sort of bugging out on you. Let me go back up and change these here. Okay, we don't need this anymore. Let's delete these. Now, because we're being more explicit here, right? We don't need this anymore, changing the animation to be up here. Okay, we don't need that anymore. We want to change the animation based upon the more explicit area here. So I'm going to cut this. I'm going to paste it here in each one. So now it's more specifically driven. In other words, if I have a problem, let's say this code, I messed it up, or something doesn't execute in this area. I now know, okay, something's up with slot 3 here. Let me go into slot 3 and figure that out. This all looks good. Oh, there's my error right there, okay? The more you organize your code this way, the easier it's going to be to debug sort of problems here, okay? The only thing we want to do now is we want to copy this entire grouping, come down here, and let's paste it in here. Oh boy, I'm still not used to moving this thing around. All right, let's bring this back up, because it's got to be up here at the top, and it's got to be out. This has to be, let me collapse these. So this is where, okay, that's lined up. That's not lined up correctly with this one. That's why it doesn't like it. Okay, now I can come and bring this up here. Come on, come on, you can do it. There we go. Oh boy. Let me collapse these so that we can actually get this done and move on. Is it because it doesn't like this D key being over here? All right, there we go. It's separated out now. What is going on? I don't want this under here. I want this under here. Is that all it is? Is that what's the issue? Oh boy. Okay. All right then. Sorry about that show. Okay, so this is going to now deal with deselecting an item. And actually, for this one, of course, we want to change the value of all of these to 0. So let's go ahead and do that. Just change these to zeros. All right. Now, one last preview for this tutorial. We've now separated these out to create a more specific connection for each slot. And the next time we're going to have to deal with sort of shutting these off so that they don't show all the time. So in other words, we'll get to the point next time when we click this one here, this will shut off. But we're making progress, okay? Just stick with it.